Take two. Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. I'm excited to continue our conversation with David Hocking. He's the author of the Revelations of Joseph Smith. We're going to talk about the revelations during the time period where the church was known as the Church of the Latter-day Saints. We'll also talk about an uncanonized revelation about Zelph and more revelations from the Nauvoo Period. So you don't want to miss this conversation. Check it out. So are those all the sections you have in the book then? So we've got the coming forth of the Book of Mormon and then church government, basically?
Yeah, and then after that, so here's what here's the next section. So this page here breaks it down as my table of contents. So I organize it into 4 time periods. The first time period is the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. The next time period with the 90 revelations, that's going to be the Church of Christ period. Now, Joseph Smith is out there in Missouri. The saints are in Missouri. There's a lot of persecution going on. He's going to organize a group in Kirtland to go to the camp of Israel, which is Zion's camp, right? So that is now May 3rd. They are now going to be called the Church of the Latter-day Saints.
Oh, yeah.
So
we go from the Church of Christ to the Church of the Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, so I then have this as my introduction. Get it here. So this is called the Church of the Latter-day Saints. That's your next breaking. And I call it a building a Latter-day Zion organization of the foreign ministry.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
and that's
so
1834 to 1838?
Yeah. And then April 26th, that's where we get the official name that we have today. That's Shell the Church.
Oh, that's the last section as well?
That'll be in the next section.
Oh, in the next section.
Yeah. So this is the, again, it's in the Joseph Smith paper. I mean, it's in the papers as well, Joseph, but it's in this history. And this is a statement that they have a meeting. It's Joseph Smith, Frederick G. Williams, and Albert Cabri, who are clerks. Joseph Smith was a moderator. After prayer, the conference proceeded to discuss the subjects of names and appellations, when a motion was made by Sidney Regan and seconded by Newell K. Whitney that this church shall be known hereafter by the name of the Church of the Latter-day Saints. Now, again, I'm using the original material, and there is no hyphenated Latter-day. They're only capitalized letters.
You're telling me the RLDS is correct?
That's correct. That is correct. There is not, that's a Brigham Young thing. So anyways, it's more of an English, most of the people that were coming over from England and the people settled in the West, they were majority that came from England. So,
well, the Strangites also have a space instead of a hyphen too.
Yeah, that's it. So, but it's there and it's all documented. Now there'll be 14 revelations during that period, but I include, because these are revelations, I include in his history, his roving over the plains of the Nephites as they're on Zion's camp. And then what he says is the visions of the past being open to my understanding by the Spirit of the Almighty. That's a revelation.
Okay.
And I discovered that the person whose skeleton was before us was a white Lamanite, and he goes off from there. So I treat that as...
So you talk about Zelph.
That's all.
Now, a lot of people, especially non-Mormons who might be watching this, and I'm amazed how many I have, might not know the story of Zelph. Can you tell the story of Zelph a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll read this again. It says, I discovered that the person whose skeleton was before us was a white Lamanite, a large, thick-set man and a man of God. His name was Zelph. He was a warrior and a chieftain under the great prophet Anadegas, who was named from the Eastern Sea. Now, the Eastern Sea really was the Lake Ontario. And you look at the Sea of Galilee, it's a little speck compared to the Ontario. I mean, Ontario would be like a big deep, the large deep compared, But the Eastern Sea to the Rocky Mountains, the curse of was taken from Zelph, or at least in part, and one of his thigh bones was broken by a stone flung from his sling while he was in battle years before his death. He was killed in battle by the arrow found among his ribs during the last great struggle of the Lamanites and the Nephites. Now, what I found interesting, I highlight in my book mounds. Now, since I'm doing this project and I'm trying to find as much research as I can, I came across with a book that B.H. Roberts had written 2 years before he got involved with this project. So that so this volume 1 was printed in 1902 from Deseret News. That's his history of the Church of Jesus Christ. So volume 2 comes later. It's like 1904, 19 something. In 1900, B.H. Roberts was writing a book called The Persecutions of the Saints, and how did the persecution come about? And so in one of the first introductions, it was because the 4 people that were going on a mission to the Lamanites, they had come into Missouri and they were missionaries. He then, this is B.H. Roberts in his book, talks about that's the beginning of the persecutions. They didn't like these Mormon missionaries coming in. But he puts this in his book. He says, after this camp had crossed the Illinois River, Zion's camp passed many of those mysterious earth mounds so common in that section. Mysterious mounds? No, not mysterious to them, for they had with them the record of the peoples who had erected them, the Nephites and Lamanites, or more likely still, the people of Jared. And I found that to be interesting because he's in essence saying, Joseph Smith said they were roaming over the mountains of the Nephites. So whether they were or not, but at least we know that Joseph Smith is the one that translated the book. He's the one that gave the book to those 8 witnesses, testified of it. And he was saying, we're roving, I'm picking up a bone of a Nephite as proof of its divine authenticity. So it goes back to my 2 different types of testimonies. You got your spiritual testimony, but we lived as a spirit before we got our physical body. So you have to have the spirit and the physical to be complete. So in essence, what Joseph Smith was saying, you already have a spiritual testimony. That's why you're on this journey with me. But I'm now going to give you physical witness. And those, if you go back and trace those people on Zion's camp, they all stayed and were faithful because they had a physical witness.
So isn't the story of Zelph, because this is so you've got a revelation here that's not been canonized by the LDS Church.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't that skeleton like 9 feet long or something?
That's not that one. No. That's a different thing. This they didn't measure. It was a thigh bone, and I don't think they measured with it, but that would have been this big guy.
Well, why do you think the LDS Church has not canonized it? Because I think it's kind of a little bit of a fantastical tale, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that, you just have to recognize the fact that you have in our DNC today, it's really good doctrine. There's things that we can learn from it. You look at the Come Follow Me magazine, they're taking excerpts of how can you apply that to your life type of way of teaching and learning. And you're going to have, if you're going to be a missionary and try to get converts to bring people up, they're not going to be interested in golf. They're going to be interested in faith, repentance, and the core of the gospel. However, I'm treating it differently. I'm treating it not as a canon, but I'm treating it because I've given the title. I chose the title, and it's a revelation. I see that as a revelation, and why not put it in? It's part of his way of saying the heavens were opened, and the Almighty gave me this vision, and this is what I now know. This person has a name. His name is. So to me, that's a revelation.
Okay. Well, very good. Okay, so we've got 3 sections then. Book of Mormon, church government, the Church of the Latter-day Saints period, and then what's next? The
next is the final one, is thus shall the church be called in the last days of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's going to be, get the page on it here. That's going to be on 261. So 261, I'll show you what that looks like. So now I have this title. This is my introduction to that.
All right, building the temple.
Now you got the Nauvoo temple.
And what are the dates on that?
This goes from April 26th to July 12th, and then he's martyred.
Of what year?
And it goes from 1838 to 1843.
Okay.
And so then you turn the page, and then you'll see there'll be 20 revelations coming.
Okay.
Okay. And then now he's 33, and now he's going to be 38. And then two of these aren't really revelations, but he's giving them as statements, in essence saying they're as if they're revelations because they're statements. So as an example, if I go to section 128, this is very powerful. I'm going to do something that is very powerful to you. So section 28 is he's in hiding. There's the bounty on Joseph Smith, undisclosed area. He's writing now a letter, kind of an epistle to the church. And it's about baptisms for the dead and how to do it and get notes, to record things. But then he waxes poetical. I call it waxes poetical. A lot of prophets do the same thing. Lehi, for example, you start with chapter 2. Nephi 2, where you've got Second Nephi 2, where you've got Lehi explaining things, and all of a sudden, that you had, wake from the dust, pull off these chains. It's very poetical. I call it poetical utterance by a prophet. And that Joseph's doing it again. He says, and again, what do we hear? Glad tidings from Gomorrah, Moroni, an angel coming, declaring the fullness of the prophets. And then he goes and, the voices of Peter, James, and John, the banks of the Mississippi. We got the voice, Heavenly Father, in the home of Peter Whitmer, Sr. in Fayette, New York. But then he says the following, and the voice of Michael the Archangel, the voice of Gabriel, and of Raphael, and of divers angels, from Michael or Adam down to the present time, all of these angels, in other words, declaring their dispensation, their rights, their honors, their keys, their majesty and glory, and the power of their priesthood. So when I got to that section, it just blew me away because I had done the book of Enoch. And Enoch is conversing with Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And Joseph Smith, in several of these revelations, my servant Enoch, not my servant Joseph. So why?
So Joseph is the new Enoch.
He's the new Enoch. So I have then a chart that I bring in that flows into where the chart is. But I have a chart that then describes how Joseph Smith and Enoch, the parallels, and there's an immense number of parallels in their life. So I do that in this book. So then when I was going through the history of, when I did the 5 books of Moses, I came across the Joseph Smith translation of a passage of scripture that's in our King James Version. It's about Abraham or Abram in the plains of Mamre, where he's at his tent door, and there's 3 men that come to him. And that's all it is, 3 men. Whereas in Joseph Smith translation, it says, and the angels, which were holy men, and they were sent after the order of God. So that's a lot more specific. They just aren't 3 men. And the book of Jasher that I had done, I went back and looked at that same area. And this is what Jasher says. And the Lord appeared unto him at the plain of Mamre and sent 3 of his ministering angels. So now they're being called after the order of God, according to Joseph. And they are holy men, and they are angels. Now, he got that revelation in 1830. The book of Jasher didn't come out until 10 years after that. That's 1840. So then I went further. I said, I wonder what the different commentaries of the rabbis of the Talmud. So I found this thing called the Babylonian Talmud. So when they had escaped from Jerusalem and they were taken into Babylon. They had the Torah, they had the rabbis, And then they have the Talmud, and the Talmud is like a commentary on the Torah. So this Babylonian Talmud, they have this thing called the Gemara commentary. And so this is what the rabbis are asking about that passage about the three men. They go, who are these three men? And this is their answer. They are the angels Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. Michael, who came to announce to Sarah that she was to give birth to a son. Raphael, who came to heal Abraham after his circumcision. And Gabriel, who went to overturn Sodom. So then I went back to look into the book of Enoch, because it talks about Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. And this is what Enoch says in First Enoch. And he said unto me, Enoch, the first is Michael, the merciful and the long-suffering, and the second, who is set over all the diseases and the wounds of men, is Raphael. And according to this Babylonian Talmud, Raphael is to heal people from their circumcision, which is a wound. And third, who is set over all powers, is Gabriel. And the Talmud says he's the one that could overturn Sodom. So I found a lot of correlation to the book of Jasher, Joseph Smith, and Enoch. And who is he conversing with? The same angels.
That's interesting.
So this is the thing that excites me when I do these projects, in that I find these correlations that we don't get in gospel classes, we don't get in institute, but it's interesting to me, and it's helping to validate that Joseph Smith used the word charlatan. He wasn't making this stuff up. He had to have revelation for this to happen, because this was, to me, what had to come first was the Book of Mormon. What came later was a revelation that said to Joseph, all these things are written in the book of Enoch and are to be testified in due time. Just on schedule, 1838, Enoch comes along, first Enoch. So, anyway, so then with that, you get the book of Jasher comes along, you get the book of Fucales, you've got these other Enoch texts coming. So when you get this book, you'll get a sense of that, because in my footnotes, in my inside pages that I do, in my index, the appendix that I have a lot of this extra stuff that help validate what Joseph Smith is revealing and how it gets authenticated by these other works.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with David Hocking. He's the author of The Revelations of Joseph Smith. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about the Canadian copyright revelation, which was uncanonized.
So this is in the voice of Heavenly Father.
Okay.
And it's commanding Joseph to go up to Canada to get a copyright of the Book of Mormon.
Oh, okay.
All right. But where it's controversial is they never did, and they couldn't get a copyright, and they came back empty. So the question is, well, was it a true revelation? Because if it was true revelation, people think, well, the Lord told you to go up there and you'll be able to get a copyright, but they didn't do it.
Right.
So, but I have some notes on that.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.